us here early in the morning. I hope you're awake. And I want to welcome you to our first panel of the day, and what will hopefully be a great day of intellectual discourse. So I am Patrick Hammond. I'm a sophomore here studying international relations, and I am also a member of this year's EPIC Colloquium. So first, let me remind you of the format. We have our 4 panelists here and one student presentation. The 4 panelists will be speaking for 12 minutes, and the student presentation for approximately 10. We will then afterwards have time for questions from panelist to panelist, and then questions from the audience. So with that, where do we begin? Iraq stands at a precipice, caught between countervailing forces internally and externally. Sectarian violence and tensions continue as the nascent democracy tries to hold its second elections in this April. The political and social dynamics continue to shift with great frequency. Just 2 weeks ago, the famous cleric, Muqtada al-Sadr, leader of the Sadr's movement, declared an end to his involvement in politics, though we'll see if that sticks. Before that, we heard about the violent takeover of certain areas of Anbar province by an al-Qaeda affiliate, the same province where so many U.S. Marines lost their lives 10 years ago. Meanwhile, turmoil continues to surround Iraq as the Syrian civil war rages, and Iran and Saudi Arabia continue to jostle for regional power. What does the future hold for this young democracy? What are the lasting impacts of the U.S. invasion begun almost 11 years ago? We'll explore these issues and some more right now. As we experienced last night, these are contentious issues we are dealing with, and I ask all involved, panelists and audience members, to respect differing views and keep discussion respectful. Please note that there will be a 1-minute limit to its questions, and you have to direct your question at one panelist only. Now with that, let me introduce our first speaker. So many of you heard last night, but I will briefly go over for those who were not here. Dr. Mawfaq al-Rubai holds a medical degree from Baghdad University, a doctorate in neurology, and is a member of the Royal College of Physicians in the United Kingdom. He lived in exile in the United Kingdom from 1979 to 2003, where he, in addition to practicing medicine, organized opposition to the Saddam Hussein government. In addition to such, he has written 5 books and hundreds of articles in English and in Arabic on Iraq, democracy, Middle East, and Islam. In 2003, he returned to Iraq, where from 2004 to 2009, he served as the National Security Advisor. Afterwards, he served as a member of Parliament, the Council of Representatives. He also founded a nonpartisan centrist political movement called Al-Wasat in 2009. Among his many awards and distinctions, both in medicine and in politics, we like to think of as the most important being the Dr. Jean Mayer Award from us here at this university. He is also now serving as our joint IGL and Fletcher resident, diplomat in residence, or statesman residence, my apologies. So with that, please begin. And help me welcome Dr. Wong.
Shukran jazeelan. Thank you very much. Bismillah. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to I can see that there are some empty seats here, probably the first haven't arrived yet. Are they there? All right, sorry. I'm going to run through my topics very quickly. But I would like to concentrate, number one, on the identity crisis. The Iraq as a some people say that, well, this is an accidental state. Others feel that this is a combination of the leftovers of the Ottoman Empire. I think it's a genuine state, it is a genuine country, it's a genuine nation. But there were a particular identity which was rammed down our throat for 82 years before 2003. And this is a country, this is an Arab Muslim country. Well, if you say an Arab Muslim Arab country, there's a problem with the Kurds and Turkmens and the Scandinavians, the Syrians, the Sabians, and so on and so forth. If you say this is a Muslim country, there are large Christian communities, Scandinavian, Syrians, and so on and so forth. So, on 9th of April 2003, we were shocked and awed. And you remember this expression of George W. When we were shocked and awed on the 9th of April 2003, we lost the orientation and we got confused. And that confusion, we still suffer from that confusion of the loss of identity. We need to retreat to our own corner and think of a new Iraqism, new Iraqi nationalism. But we wanted to be left alone to assume and to acquire that new identity. So this is a challenge number one. Challenge number two, which is a man-made mistake, if you like, is the Constitution. The Constitution we have drafted under, well, we were in a hurry to get a Constitution. But that Constitution, there is a structural fault in it, which is a Constitution to defend the rights of the three communities. It's not a Constitution to form a new nation, to build a new nation. And we need to go back and reform that Constitution. My third point is as a follows. Iraq I see as a valley, geopolitically, as a valley. Now, Iraq post-2003 is like a valley, like a depression, if you like. And on the east of that valley, well, there are surrounded by 4 humongous mountains, volcanoes. On the east, Iran with its nuclear aspiration. On the west, Israel with its nuclear arsenal. On the north, Turkey with as a regional economic superpower. And in the south, the GCC as a regional economic superpower, as well as a center of gravity for economy, for politics, and for religion. And Iraq, post-2003, is like a valley. We need to build that valley to counterbalance these 4 volcanoes. We don't need to build it up militarily, but we need to build it up economically and build a new nation. And the way to build this is not through war, but through a concept I call it vertebral spine. But I'll explain this towards my end of presentation. After 2003, there were 2 main options in front of us. But one of them is what I call misguided option. And that's because the Shia are the majority in the country, some people were vying to have a Shia-dominated country with a sectarian program. And that's going to fail. That's definitely is going to fail. But the other alternative can be a majority-dominated government with a national program, national patriotic program, to build a new nation. There are three ways of unifying the three communities. One used by Saddam Hussein, which is war. Just launch war against your neighbors. And that we cannot do and we don't want to do. And the second is to impose what I call the national military duty, to make the serving in the army as a national duty for each and every young. Well, we don't want to do that because we go to militarizing the society. What we wanted to do is, through public work, building our infrastructure and developing the economy. Through this concept of what I call vertebral spine. If you look to Iraq map, you will see the two rivers running from the north down south. And you will see, you see the population density, sorry. The population concentrate is on this, what I call the spine in the middle. And if you build around this, if you like, vertical axis of Iraq, your industry, your agriculture, your development, your economy, and most of the oil, by the way, also in that axis. This is the best insurance policy. This is like a bolt to keep the three communities running from Kurdistan to the Arab Sunni community areas down to the south and Baghdad. And you can build your railways there. Through that, you can build your roads. You can build even your airlines. You can build all sorts of things around that, what I call the vertebral spine. And this is the way to unify the country through the economic development, through creating jobs. What's the future hold for Iraq? Either a dictatorship, which will give you a false stability, or an all-out civil war, or a failed state, or, which I adopt, and I believe is going to happen, a slow but progressive improvement and progress towards full-fledged democratic parliamentary constitutional system. But the immediate future depends on the Sunni Arab community seeing the next general election as free and fair, and they're included in it. And this is crucial for the immediate future, with the immediate. What are the roots of these problems in Iraq? These are not the making of this government. Please don't get fooled by these journalist reports saying that this government is the source of all evils in Iraq. This is not true. This is a country with a very long history of wars. There's a lot, since the formation of this country, there was an internal power struggle, whether between three communities, different parties, you name it. In the recent years, some of the failed governments as well, post-2003 and before 2003. And to add to that, all the legacy of the US mistakes after 2003, and the isolation by the Arab states. Near isolation of Iraq by the Arab states, neighboring Arab states. To add to all this, oil wealth has not translated into economic growth a real employment and has not increased per capita income. So we're going through, if you like, a crossroad here. Crossroad of either false stability, I called it, which will, the dictatorship will bring false stability, or a national unifying government for the three communities, unifying the three communities with a fair share of wealth and power between the three communities. The key challenges, I see them in 2014 and this year. Number one, security in Al-Anbar. Number two is the budget deficit. Number three is Baghdad-Erbil and Ankara agreement, or disagreement as the case may be. And general election, the general election on the 30th of April this year. Formation of the federal government after the general election. And the formation of the KRG government as well, which we've been waiting for it for the last 5 months now. Probably they're going to break the record. The world record is in Belgium anyway, which is they're still in the Belgium hand for 9 months, I think, 9 or 10 months. There are so many challenges in confronting, facing Iraq. But I believe in this nation. I think Iraq is a unique nation, as a cradle of civilization. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have already invented it in 5,000 years ago. We don't need to reinvent the constitution. We have already written the first constitution in the history. I strongly believe in this country, and I believe we'll put it out of its present challenges, and we'll make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. So our next speaker is Ms. Emma Skye. Ms. Skye is a senior fellow at Yale University's Jackson Institute, where she lectures on the new Iraq and Middle East politics. She earned an undergraduate degree in Oriental Studies from Oxford University. She also studied at Alexandria University, Hebrew University, and the University of Liverpool. She spent time in a number of NGOs in development, conflict resolution in Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. Starting in 2004, she served in Iraq as the political advisor to the commanding general of U.S. forces, General Odierno. And she has published numerous articles on Iraq in the New York Times, Foreign Affairs, Foreign Policy, and Politico. She was honored for her service by becoming a member of the British Empire in 2003, and then an officer of the British Empire in 2008. So please help me welcome Ms. Skye.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me to this conference. And it's great to see old friends here, such as Dr. Muwaffaq, or Dr. Mo as we call him. I know that Dr. Muwaffaq ended on an optimistic note, but I have to say that personally, I'm not optimistic for Iraq's future. And I say that with great sadness, having spent a number of years in Iraq. And I think where Iraq is today was not inevitable. The many different paths that Iraq could have taken, and different futures that could have been envisaged for Iraq, particularly from 2010 onwards. I'm not going to go into sort of all the mistakes made in 03, 04, surge, all of that, but really look at what went wrong from 2010 onwards. And there's no doubt that the regional tensions that Dr. Muwaffaq spoke about, there's no doubt that that plays a negative role, and there's no doubt that the civil war in Syria also plays a negative role in Iraq. But I believe that Iraq's problems, essentially domestic problems, and a massive failure of Iraq's elites to build a better future for the country. And this failure of the elites is something that I really want to address, because every nation to a level is an artificial nation. America is an artificial nation. That's, many states start with some form of artificiality, but it's the leaders of that country who determine the country's future. When you think of the United States, the vision that the founding fathers had was a vision that brought together people of all different ethnicities, nationalities, religions to be American. So it can be done. And I believe that Iraq's elites, particularly after 2003, have failed this. They like to blame everyone else for their problems, but I really feel they need to take responsibility for it. And in particular, Prime Minister Maliki, because it's the Prime Minister who sets the tone for the political elites. Now, back in 2010, there was a very close elections in which Maliki was the runner-up in those elections. But what happened then was the United States came out and backed a second term for Prime Minister Maliki, and so did Iran. And so the winning bloc never had the first opportunity to try and form a government. And in fact, it was Iran that succeeded in brokering the government by pressuring Muqtada al-Sadr to give support for a second Maliki term. And the price of that was always going to be no US forces remaining inside Iraq. So what's happened since the 2010 elections? So it was a very long, drawn-out process to actually form a government. But since then, the Prime Minister has not worked at bringing everybody together to real national unity. Instead, he's worked systematically to remove his rivals. And he's been using all the tools of the state at his disposal. So the judiciary, the Integrity Commission, use of special forces. And what this has done is exacerbated the sense of rage within the Sunni community, because the Sunni community as a community felt that it was under attack. It felt that all of them were regarded as Ba'athis or terrorists or Al-Qaeda. And when they saw their leaders being removed, it made them feel very insecure. And the agreements made with the awakening leaders that America worked with during the surge, those agreements weren't honored. And the grievances, many of these grievances are legitimate grievances, these grievances weren't dealt with. And so this action by the government has pushed more and more of Iraq's Sunnis towards radicalism. And you see that narrative forming between the conflicts in Syria and Iraq. So this narrative of Sunni disenfranchisement, struggling against Iranian-backed regimes. And this very dangerous narrative is gaining more traction. And US policies seem very contradictory towards Syria and Iraq. The problems we see today in this growing violence comes from the targeting of the former Minister of Finance, Dr. Rafa Assawi, in December 2012, which then sparked these protest movements among the Sunni community, aggrieved at their marginalization. The Iraqi security forces raided a protest camp in Hawija. That led to the deaths of 50 people. And in December 2013, in response to this growing Al-Qaeda, Islamic State of Iraq presence in western Anbar, the Prime Minister ordered the Iraqi army into Anbar. And this was an initiative that had wide support at the beginning. But in a raid in Anbar, the division commander of the 7th Division was killed by the terrorists. And the Prime Minister then ordered the Iraqi security forces into Ramadi, accused the Ramadi protest camp of being an Al-Qaeda hotbed, and also arrested a Sunni MP, Ahmed Alwani. In the raid, the MP's brother was killed. This caused an uproar in the cities of Ramadi and Fallujah. You saw tribes coming out against the Iraqi army withdrawing, and the Islamic State of Iraq then moving in, Iraq and Syria, then moving into Ramadi and Fallujah. So then the tribes are turning against these. So very mixed and very confusing developments over the last few weeks. So for some of the tribes, they think of Islamic State in Iraq and Syria as the biggest enemy. Others think of the government of Iraq as the bigger enemy. The Prime Minister promised that he would end this fighting within days, and it's now been going on for about 2 months, and shows no sign of resolution. And about 2,000 Iraqis have been killed in the last 2 months. And so the sad thing is all the gains that the US forces have made in Iraq during the surge have been lost. And the wedge that the US forces drove between Sunni moderates and Sunni extremists has been removed. So now Iraq is approaching national elections in 2014. And already we're seeing more and more violence as the terrorists are trying to undermine the government to show it can't protect its people. They're killing indiscriminately mass murder of Shia in the south and in Baghdad. Also assassinating Sunnis who are seen to work with the Iraqi government. And the Prime Minister calculates that these operations in Anbar, getting the Iraqi army to go into Anbar, is going to be good for his electoral prospects, because he can portray himself as the Shia strongman. And amongst all this, we've got the problems between the Baghdad government and the Kurdistan regional government over transferring the budget. And the President of Kurdistan declared the refusal to transfer the budget as a declaration of war against the people of Kurdistan. But these problems between Baghdad and Erbil are resolvable. It's politicking. There's nothing there that is irresolvable. So what has been the US position in all of this? So when Prime Minister Maliki visited Washington just in November 2013, President Obama praised him for honoring the sacrifices of Americans by ensuring a strong, prosperous, inclusive and democratic Iraq. Furthermore, he said he was encouraged by Maliki's efforts to ensure that all people inside of Iraq, Sunni, Shia and Kurd, feel that they have a voice in their government. So Iraqis hear this and they think, what is going on? Is Obama looking at the same country that they're looking at? Because things do not look good in Iraq. And this leads to all these conspiracy theories of secret agreements between America and Iran, which are nonsense. But these elections, it's very unlikely that they're actually going to change anything. The same faces are appearing once again. It's likely that the Prime Minister's coalition, the States of Law, will be the largest bloc. I personally think it's going to be very hard for him to gain parliamentary approval for a third term, but he can continue to sit in the seat as Prime Minister of a caretaker government and stopping any other contenders. But Iraq's problems won't go away if the Shia manage to replace Prime Minister Maliki. He's a symptom of the problem. He's not the cause of all of these problems. Because you've got the same kleptocratic elite, they're going to argue once more about how to divide up Iraq's oil wealth. So Iraq is 95% of its budget comes from oil. And this really has been a curse on the country, because it means this massive gap between Iraq's citizens and its elites. Citizens are not paying taxes,